what's up everyone? Today we're going to finish the Makita. As you can tell, I kind of did a few things to it already. I originally was going to do a video on replacing the motor, but I mean that rock's normal because it's not really rigid. But the problem is this, when I was looking at it, I don't know how well that translates, but on both sides of the crank it rocks pretty significantly, and it has a huge vacuum leak because either the bearings are going out for sure, and most definitely the seals are going out, hence the reason why we have a vacuum leak. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace the bearings and the seals. I hope this isn't as hard as a steel chainsaw, because that would suck. They're not easy to take off, I'll just say that. So I'm going to take off this cylinder. It's just 4 screws. We're going to need a longer Torx bit to go in there. And let's see here. I think that's about it. And that whole thing should just slide right off. You know what? I'm not going to do that. Want to know why? Because I still need to take that clutch off. The clutch is going to be significantly easier to take off without. Oh wait, let's see here. Clutches should be tightening is loosening, so I want to actually go this way. This is a piston stop. It rests on top of the piston. It's a very, I mean, it's not soft, but it's a rounded bottom, and you can use rope, you can use anything, but piston stop on the top is what I like to use. Clutches the other way, it's gonna be tightening is loosening, so we're gonna try this way. And I spun it over so the piston is touching it, so when I actually go to remove it, it's not gonna slap into the top of it. Oh, those are just screws I took out. Maybe it's not. Should be. I guess we could try the other way just in case. Or it could just be on there very, very hard. I mean, these are a special type of dirty. My battery full? Yeah, it's full. Okay. Well, you're just gonna vibrate. I'm just gonna take that off real quick. It should just slide right off once it's off. Finally, after a little heat and some penetrating oil, let it sit for a couple minutes. Eventually decided to play well with each other, or with us. I didn't want to get too hot because I didn't want to overheat these springs. It's still pretty warm, so. Set this off to the side. I didn't realize that this came off in separate pieces like that. It's interesting. I'll let that cool. Whew, that's still a little warm too. I tried not to get penetrating oil on there either. Hot. Okay. Man hands. There should be a needle bearing somewhere in here. Oh yeah, it's in there. So you're gonna want to be very, very careful with that. Ooh, hot. Still hot. If you really want to go above and beyond, you could put a little grease to kind of make sure they don't fall out. Oh, that's still pretty fucking hot too. Okay, so there is a little clip, but we're not going to worry about the clip right now because I mainly wanted to get the clutch off. The flywheel's already off, so if you had not done that already, then you should be doing that now. But I did, so we don't have to worry about that. So now I'm going to take off the cylinder, disconnect it from the intake boot. Probably shove like a small piece of towel down into the intake boot so I don't get a whole lot of crap in there, and then we'll come back and see what we have. So I took off the tank and the base assembly and everything. It just seemed easier just being held together with a bolt here, and then just one on the other side. Simple. Next thing you know, the whole thing slides right out, so we don't have to worry about a lot of the grime. I mean, don't worry, this is still grimy, but this whole piece splits off into two, and that is going to be what we need to do. It can be a little difficult because it's pressed in there some ways, so I'm going to see. Oh, maybe it's not going to be difficult. I know steel chainsaws specifically have a tool that I'm not going to say is a giant ripoff. Well, I probably shouldn't say it's a giant ripoff, but it's a giant ripoff. So I'm going to spend a little time. There is a gasket that goes in between here, and it's very important we don't damage it. Well, this surface, I could care less about the gasket. I have all new gaskets. So I'm going to spend a little time being very careful. I'm going to split it, and we'll see what we have. At this point, I do believe we're going to have to remove that little clip that was on this end. There might be another one on the other side. I do not believe so, but I do want to remove it. It's going to make removing everything a lot easier because then the seal is going to come off just right over it. I'm not fighting the seal, and the bearing I'm hoping is going to slide out as well. The easiest way to do that is to take a flathead screwdriver and being very careful not to damage the surface. Just kind of go around, put your hand over it, just kind of lift it up. Just kind of work it off. This is very important to keep on there too. Oh, to not forget about. You'll have problems to say the least. Okay. One clip. Simple tool. Surface looks fine. I'm going to continue looking and trying to remove and split this crankcase. And there we have it. It was about a whole 3 minutes. I just took my hands, wobble, wobble, wobble on either side, and it literally came off flywheel side first, and then pulled on the other side, and boom, came right out. The bearings are still in the crank. The seal, I mean, yeah, that's how it is. It's definitely, well, I thought it was wear, but it's not really. The hard part is going to be to, oh wow, yeah. Let's get you in a look at this. To remove a bearing, it's not easy because it's so close to, I don't have anything to back it up or to grab behind it, so I was kind of wondering, and then I started moving this one. It's not supposed to happen like that. This one's pretty good actually still, but we're going to replace both. But yeah, that's not good. This was definitely our problem. This one probably is fine, but you know, that's usually the one that goes out because that's the one that does all the work. I might try heating up the bearings a little bit just to see if I can get them off, but there is fuel down there, so I don't really want to do that if I don't have to. I might just use a bearing puller, but these are the parts we have today. New cylinder head gasket. That is part number 346873-0. It's a Makita part from the looks of it. Then we have a new, that's weird. I mean, this is the gasket right here. It's a crankcase gasket. But it has this little piece. I wonder if that just comes off or I have to cut it off. Probably just have to cut it off. Anyway, it is part number 965-531-111. Get 2 bearings. 211154-0. And then I have a set of seals that I will try to locate now. Put it with the other box because these came like well before all the other ones for whatever reason. But they are 213814-0. It's 2 of them. I think they're the same. 213814-0. Yeah, okay. So we have 2 of these. And that should be everything we need to do this project. This, like I said, the piston and the cylinder are new, so we don't have to worry about that. We just have to clean it up after we're done because it got a little gooey there. And I mean, this gasket doesn't look horrible, but since we have a new one, we're gonna might just come off right now. Wow, is this going to come off in one piece? Oh man, I've got so used to working on steels. I'm just so used to their nonsense where this just would not happen. Huh. That's good. I mean, there's a little bit of ink and whatnot, but that's fine. We'll get those bearings off. This is a bearing puller. I have it wedged underneath the bad bearing right now. I just have it, I mean, it's a bearing puller. I don't know much more to call it, but we're gonna give this a try. Is it coming up? Part of it's coming up, not all of it. And only one side really wanted to go up. I have to be careful not to damage the piston. I should just take it off, but I don't have another clip, and every time I take this off I have to break a clip. So I'm just being very careful. It looks like it's doing fine though. So I'm going to work on that. Same thing, I'm just going to take them off and then we'll be right back. More or less, I'm just going to heat it and try to find something to gently pry on the outside. That's how you do it. If you have a piston on there like I do, then you're going to have to make sure you don't overheat anything because that is aluminum. In fact, I think I'm just going to wrap that in a towel right now. Just so I remember not to heat that area up. Okay, so I'm gonna get to work. There we go. Now we have one semi-warmed bearing off. Appears to be no obvious damage, so that's good. Nothing wrong. Okay, going to do the exact same thing to the other side. That way we can put both of them on. In addition to that, I'm going to spend a decent amount of time with some carb cleaner, and I'm going to take off this grime, and I just want to pretty much make it really shiny and smooth. What's this? Oh, it's a little dirt or something. That's fine. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get that started. That was a lot easier than the other one, that is for sure. Something to notate is the orientation of the bearing. You can actually see the ball bearings, and on the outside had this cover. So we need to put the new ones on the exact same way. So I'm going to put the tool away because we don't need it anymore. We have everything extracted. I'm going to clean up the piston because it got a tad on the dirty end. yeah, so I'm just gonna get that all cleaned up and toss these in the trash. So there we go. Something I forgot to mention is I like to put the seals in the freezer because I'm going to be putting them in the actual case. Cold metal will shrink and warm metal will expand. So we are going to want this to get warmer. I'm not going to use any heat though. I mean, maybe real briefly I'll put like a small propane torch on around it from a real far distance just to kind of get it warmer. And then the new seals should just pop right in, or excuse me, the bearings. In the meantime, the seals, we have the added luxury of just hitting them out. Voila. One seal removed. I'm going to do that to the same side. Just be careful not to damage the surface that the seal is mated to, otherwise this whole thing will be for nothing and you'll need a whole new piece. I think they sell them separately, but I'm not 100% sure. They might sell them as a pack of 2, but unless you really want to go down that road of discovery, I suggest don't damage the surface. Something else kind of go over, I'm going to make sure this is exceptionally clean. This is going to be the time that you're going to want to clean with everything getting ready. Nothing's going to be installed quite yet. I'm going to clean the surface. I'm going to clean the inside. I don't want any grime anywhere. That is going to be the killer of all of our hard work here. I mean, if you see it, it's not really hard. It's just, it can take some time. I think if I wasn't recording this, this would take about an hour and a half, depending on if you also had to do something with the piston and cylinder, but even then we're at that point, it wouldn't even increase the time hardly at all. Only other thing that would cause there to be an issue is if, let's say, like the clutch was giving you a real hard time, or you didn't have a bearing puller or something. That can definitely be a time vampire. So, like I said, I'm going to spend some time getting this nice and clean. Gonna make sure all the surfaces are not damaged. For whatever reason, there's silicone on this. I'm gonna remove the silicone. I don't believe there should be silicone for this. I mean, that would explain why it was really hard to get off. The breakdown says gasket, no silicone. I'll have to do a little research, but I'm pretty sure that this was replaced before. That was a little too easy. So my freezer's inside the house, which is a walk away, and I decided to go and get it, open the bag, took a screwdriver, put the bearing through the middle of the screwdriver, or the screwdriver through the middle of the bearing, and now I made sure that the right side was facing down. This is the side with the ball bearings. As you can tell, spins freely, and I literally just plopped it in and it fell right into place. So I'm wondering if it's going to stay in place. I mean, yeah. I might heat it up just a little bit with a propane torch just to make sure, because it is still a little bit cool. And it's still pretty cool to the touch, but when I mean a little bit, I mean, here's the propane torch. I don't mean like right here, I mean like 2 feet away. I mean, you could put your hand next to it. Basically, you're turning this into a low, medium setting to a hair dryer. That's it. I'm not looking to get anything hot, just warmed up so it can expand and put back into place. Correct orientation. This one's not plopping into the space nearly as easily. Maybe a little rapid tap tap. I'm not hitting the center at all. Hitting the outside. Because the outside is supported by the wall, the inside is not. You do not want to hit it on the inside, unless of course you're putting this on the crankshaft, in which case that's what you would want to do. But either way, that wasn't all that difficult, now was it? I don't think so. So this is the side that has the clutch on it, right? Yeah, clutch. Okay. So here's our clip. I cleaned the crankshaft. We need our gasket. I wanted to make sure everything else lined up right. The rod, which I think the other one's in the other half. The gasket seems fine. I don't see any problems. So I'm going to now, I know I give steel a hard time, but the reason why those gaskets never survive is because they're firmly in place. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I don't believe this steel does this, but I'm going to spray it with high tack. Basically, it's like gasket sealant. That's on there. I got a little on my thumb, so it's going to look like I have nail polish on for a little bit of time, but that's fine. There's no one here but us. So put this back on. That was surprisingly easy. So far. We definitely need to push it down a little bit. So having never done this particular one before, I think I would have just put the bearings on the crankshaft. Seemed a little bit easier. But at the end of the day, what I did is I took a socket that fit exactly around the crank, put a hammer, hit the inside part of the bearing, because yet again, that's a supported side. And then after that, I hit it down to a point where it was on the old bearing. Flipped it over, did the exact same thing, and now it is basically done. Now, something you really need to pay attention to is to make sure that you don't get the connecting rod slammed in the middle there. So be aware of that. You don't want that to happen. So I'm going to blow everything out. I'm going to take a knife. I'm going to clean up this gasket a little bit more. Put the screws that hold this together in, and we'll be back. I found conflicting torque measurements, so I just torqued it down to 200 inch-pounds or so. I mean, that's usually what you do for like a head. So I'm like, well, this is not a head, but it's still motor-ish, and it's aluminum, so yeah. So this should be nice and good to go. This should move freely, and it does. I don't really hear anything wrong. Okay. I need to blow it out still, because I saw a little goop. So I'm going to go get that blown out. Next, we're going to do the seals. I think before we go down the avenue of seals, we're going to go down the avenue of putting the cylinder on. So I'm going to oil the cylinder up real quick here. Get that nice and gooey. Get the pin lined up. I noticed something weird. The arrow's facing the wrong direction on this motor. The arrow's facing towards the intake, which is not too common. I know it's intake because that's the side that has the pin on it. You don't usually have the pin on the exhaust side. At least nothing I ever seen. Oh, that was easy. You know why? Because we forgot. Okay, put the gasket on now, so we shouldn't have any problems. So this is the part that we have to be very careful on, because we need to make sure that the connecting rod isn't like, I guess I don't want to say torqued, but like, one second. Why is this screw being so difficult? Oh, because there's goo on it from the head gasket material they used before. Anyway. Is this just not wanting to go through its little hole? Unless it's on, I meant to go the other way. Yep, it was just flipped on the wrong side. So make sure your screw holes line up before. So I flipped it over. I'm going to use the impact to kind of run these down a little bit, then I'll torque on the spec, which I also couldn't really find an exact amount. I found a lot of stuff that said approximate, or what, a form that said, no, you need to do this. Oh, no, it needs to be this. So I'm going to do the same. They all kind of go around 200 inch-pounds. So I'm just going to sink them down. So, where's the other screw? I know there's 4. Well, either way. Oh, here it is. I'm going to take a little time, take out the torque wrench again, and get this torque to spec. That way we can get the seals done. So that's boring, so I'll be right back. Okay, it should move freely, and it does. So now we're going to work on the seals. I just didn't want there to be a huge gaping hole and have the piston rocking around all over again and whatnot. So the seals, excuse me, you need to kind of remember where, or the distance that they were. Let's put a little oil down in there too. So you don't want to push them in too far. You also don't want them hanging out. For this one's easy. It's flush with this little exterior area. So I'm going to take that socket that was the right size for the crank. Seems a little big. That should be good. And a small hammer. There's too many paper towels here. Okay, apparently my small hammer decided to take a small walk. So we're going to have to use a big hammer, because it's right here, and just not use the full force of it. Just going to make sure it's straight. Now that's started, we're going to take this extension, maybe not, maybe we'll continue with this. I do believe it might be kind of kitty-wappins. You're just going to shake around, but I'll show you the end result. And there we have it, end result. So I'm going to do the other one. Then I'm going to start putting it back together, because I think we're almost to that point. So it's important you get the correct depth on the seal, because if it's too far out, it's not going to seal correctly. If it's too far in, it can start to damage itself. So, oh, and probably not sealed correctly as well. I also don't want to forget the cool clip. Trying to find the little groove. There we go. Unfortunately, I don't really have a very good trick for this one, for putting it back on. So I'm just going to spend some time and probably ruin a couple good sections of fingernail, and I'll be back. Put the flywheel on just so we can make sure there's still good compression. There we go. I think my finger's kind of just oily and nasty. Not all that spectacular. I don't think it's leaking from there. I think we need to torque down that maybe more than 200 inch-pounds, or maybe that's why there was the oh wait, was this open? Yes, of course. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh yeah, very good compression. Sometimes it's the simple things in life. Okay, so we are good to go. I don't think I'm going to show a whole lot more of the reassembly, but just know that, anyway, just know it's exactly the same way you took it apart. And, well, if you are doing this part, then you're going to know how to do that part. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time putting it back together. Start with the clutch, then put it back on the base, you know, yada yada yada, so forth, so forth, so forth, so on and so on. So hopefully the next time you see this, we will be pretty much ready to have it get started. I realized I kind of yada yada'd past the story of this machine. This is a neighbor's of mine, know him pretty well, does a lot of yard maintenance, a lot of large projects. And this is one that they use for patio work, pavers, you know, stuff like that. Owner of the machine noticed it wasn't cutting right. He asked me what I thought about it. I'm like, oh, there could be a lot of reasons, but just judging what it could be, I'm assuming you need a new motor or engine, piston, cylinder, whole 9 yards. So they got a kit, and one of their employees like, oh, I could do that. Put it together. Then they brought it to me, because every time they turned it on, and unless they were flooding it, it would always over rev, dangerously high speeds. So I instantly kind of thought either gasket or seal and bearing. And when I took it apart, you saw the destruction of it. So all in all, he told me it was $120 for the piston and cylinder off the internet, and I paid about 40 bucks for the gasket, 2 bearings, 2 seals, and the other gasket. And I think it also has a new carb, because I think that was one of their ideas as well. Right now what I'm doing is I'm going to turn all these mixture screws in. I'm going to set them out one full turn. Because like I said, they were choking this thing, or they were flooding this thing. So I'm sure that's off. Okay, let's give it a few pulls and see what happens. And choke. Let's make it a little easier on ourselves. forgot to tighten these. Let me go ahead and do that. About a day later, I decided to go inside, eat some dinner, and think about things. And I decided to look at the linkage on the carburetor. And I don't remember touching the linkage, but maybe I did. It was not closing the throttle all the way. So it was like 3/4 throttle was the lowest it's gonna go. That's gonna rev up a little high. Let's give it another pull. I was really concerned I didn't put the crank seals in far enough, even though it looked like I did. And I did the same way the other ones were. Or I didn't torque the crankcase down to the correct spec. That would suck. Probably more of the second one, or more of the first one. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. I think this will probably need a new clutch, because when I was looking at it, it did look a little flimsy. Usually clutch springs are a lot more stiff, and this one I could probably lower the idle, but from experience with this literal brand and same model, this is a pretty good idle. And I might do some fine tuning to it. I have a couple extra bricks I might try cutting, but it seems to be doing pretty good. The owner of this machine knows how to fine tune, because I've done carb work for him before, and I didn't have bricks, so I told him how to really do it if he's running into occasions, or I asked him if he wants me to, if he brings me with some, I can do it for him. He's like, nah, it's fine. Anyway, moving forward. So this, I don't think I mentioned, but this is a DPC7311. I got the carb kit off Amazon. It was a Nickel kit, $100 and something. The seals, the bearings, the gasket, the head gasket, all that, I bought off eReplacementParts.com. Total for everything, I believe it's $170. But for that $170, with the exception of a carb kit and new clutch, you basically have a new, mechanically new machine. Obviously the plastics are different and whatnot. But other than that, it runs pretty good. Only two things I would say probably needs to be done is the new belt. It looks a little dry. And new clutch, that seems to be fine. Well, I believe it will need to be replaced here in the future, but it seems to be working okay, at least right now. And other than that, that's it. The kit came with everything. So I got these parts from eReplacementParts.com. They seem to be working pretty good. They all worked out well. They seem to be pretty high quality. There's no more shaking in the crankshaft. There's obviously it's sealed correctly. The gaskets didn't seem like they were bad at all. $40 is a pretty cheap price for replacement of just the crank seals and bearings. That's pretty good. You notice I didn't have to use any special tooling. Thank you, Steel, by the way, for requiring a $70 tool to open up a chainsaw. But other than that, that's about it. So if you have a DPC7311 or anything like this, they're all basically the same, more or less. Same process at least. Hopefully this helps you out. Like I said, it just ran out of control. Like, it legitimately was like you're holding gas the entire time, holding down the throttle the entire time. So that's dangerous. I could turn it off, of course, but you're not going to have it just running full bore all the time. And yeah, the reason why, I know I'm rambling, but I'm pretty sure no one's watching this anyway, except for maybe Critter Cam. Thumbs up if you hear this one, Critter. Anyway, With the excess amount of air going through any of these seals or gaskets, it's going to mix up the mixture. So you're going to have a lot of fuel and a lot of air going in there. And when you have both those two items, you're going to get a lot of speed, engine speed, and you're going to have uncontrollable engine speed, because you, unlike when your finger is feathering or holding down the throttle, your engine is not going to let you do that. It's going to let as much in as it can. So you have no control. Your engine's in control, and generally that's a bad thing. I'm going to let you go. Have a good evening. See you later. Put a thumbs up if you liked it. Definitely subscribe. Follow me on Small Engine 101, and I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good night.